I'm engaged. How do I get married? I'm your host, Kevin Dennis. In addition to leading the charge at Wedding IQ, I also run Fantasy Sound Event Services, a lighting and entertainment company based in Livermore, California, that I founded over 35 years ago. Each week on this podcast, we'll explore a new corner of the wedding planning so you can prepare for your I-dos without the stress. From budgeting to booking vendors to day of drama, let's talk smart wedding planning. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married? We're very excited to have Chuck Johnson with us. Chuck is a DJ out of over in Orlando area, right? Or outside of Orlando?
Yes, Orlando,
Yep.
Florida. Yep.
Yep. And then, but Chuck DJs at Disney. And if you haven't figured it out, we're really ready for the Disney. We're leaning all in with the Disney here. So, but
The Disney day today. Yeah.
It is. So Chuck, tell us a little bit about Chuck.
Well, I wasn't born here in Florida. I was born up in Baltimore, and lived there, most of my childhood, and actually moved out to Southern California a million years ago when I was in my 20s, and met my then wife at Disneyland. And we decided California was way too expensive. And so way back then we moved to Orlando when it was cheap to live in Orlando. It's not so cheap anymore. But I've been here ever since. And I have my company is called Classic Disc Jockeys, but it's really just me, DJ Chuck. I do a lot of weddings out and about in Central Florida, anywhere up to St. Augustine, down to Tampa, that type of thing. But I am one of the featured Walt Disney World Fairytale Wedding DJs, and I've been doing that for 15 plus years now. So I do official Disney Fairytale Weddings. So that's pretty cool.
That's well, and
Very cool.
I think that's what we're going to talk to you about today. But
okay,
August.
Yes. So Chuck is going to be talking about the Disney guest experience method, which I'm really excited to hear what that's all about and how he uses that to structure wedding reception entertainment effectively. So yeah, we're going to ask you some questions, Chuck, and we're excited to hear what you have to say.
All right, I'll do my best.
Sure. So why should the guest experience be important to a couple?
Oh man, one of my favorite sayings is when somebody is getting married, a lot of times the couple will think, hey man, it's my day, it's my rules, it's my thing. And I always say, hey, look at it like this. The ceremony is all yours, but the reception is a party for your guests and you too, but your guests, you want to have your guests have a great time. So give them something really memorable. Give them something that's different than every other wedding that they've been to. And they'll remember your wedding for not just next week or next year, but, the goal is 5 or 10 years from now. Hey, remember back at, Kevin and Mary's wedding 10 years ago when A, B, and C happened? That's kind of my philosophy. That's what I want to bring to the couples I work with.
And
Totally.
It's funny you say that. I was going to say, let me real quick. I was going to say, my wife and I have been married almost 18 years now, and we had we got married on New Year's Eve, and we brought out pizza, and people still to this day talk about pizza and food just kept coming, and so I think it's all about the guest experience. So I love it.
And I think more so like recently than it ever has been before. Like obviously there always has been sort of focus on the guest experience, but in any like recent wedding education like Kevin and I have tuned into, I mean, even the Knot just came out with saying that is the top priority for couples these days is the guest experience. So I think more so lately, It's just been such a huge focus.
Absolutely too. And when you talk to people that are not in the industry, like when I get together with my friends or my family and this topic of weddings comes up, they always want to go to the negative first. They always want to say, hey, Chuck, like, what's the worst thing you've ever seen at a wedding? And so I always try to reframe that and say, hey, think about some of the weddings you've been to in the past couple of years. Is there any like one specific thing that stands out in your mind that you still think about today? And a lot of times it's not. They'll be like, oh, it was fun. We had a great time. Nothing specific. But if there is something specific, it's almost 100% of the time it was something very customized and personalized to that couple. They were telling their story somehow, and that's what they remember. It's not about if you have chicken or steak for dinner or what your centerpieces are, unless your centerpieces are pictures of you as little kids. And when you're 5, that's table 5, That might be interesting. That might be cool. But if you personalize and customize it, man, that's what I find guests remember all the time.
And yeah, I feel like that will be a big topic today is the personalization and of course the focus on guest experience. So why do you think engaged couples need to think about structuring their reception entertainment when it comes to personalization and the focus on guest experience?
Well, because if you are like any typical citizen of the world and you get that wedding invitation, probably 50% of those people getting that wedding invitation, like, oh, great, another wedding we got to go to, So we want to shock and awe them when they come to our events, right? They get there, and it's kind of a Disney thing as well. I learned a lot from them, but you're always kind of under promising and over delivering. And when they get to that reception and there's some kind of crazy introduction that is just high energy and really themed to that couple, and they come in and you can feel that energy like vibrating throughout the ballroom or the room or the farm or wherever you are, man, and you start off that way, then it's nothing but awesome energy for the rest of the night. So I try to stress that as much as I can. People think about, I don't want some introverted brides or grooms might be, I don't want to focus on me. And it's not about that. It's really what speaks to you and sharing that with your guests. And when you can take that conduit through your MC, your DJ, and you can kind of hype that and create something that's really special about that guest, man, that's electric sometimes.
I agree. All right. So, being the Disney expert, how does Disney do it differently?
Well, besides the fact of the location, right?
Yeah. you can't beat that.
You're right there. You have access to all of that. So you have access to all that intellectual property, that IP. So I just did a wedding last week where we're cutting the cake, and I say, "Yep, hold up a second. We need somebody else to help you cut the cake." And in walk Mickey and Minnie. And they come and they help the couple. They come and they help the couple cut the cake, and they cut the cake. And then we come out and we do a couple of dances, and then they go off and get some personal pictures together. So you get a Mickey and Minnie at your wedding reception, which is super cool. The stuff behind me, I'm a big Haunted Mansion fan. There's not just film characters, but park characters can come to your wedding too. There's a character called the Haunted Butler. He's basically a ghost from the Haunted Mansion, and makes my job real easy because he does the introductions into the reception.
Oh, no way.
In a ghostly zombie type voice. And I'm sitting back just playing the Haunted Mansion music. So that's a good gig for me. So I can kind of give all the names to him, and the Haunted Butler will invite the entire wedding party into the reception. So that's fun too. Entertainment wise, obviously there's that whole thing, the set pieces. You can bring in a set piece of scaled down Cinderella's castle and put it into the ballroom. Anything you want to theme it to. If you're having a brunch, you'll get waffles that are shaped like Mickey. That's pretty cool.
Wow.
So yeah, really the only limit is money, and if you ask Disney to do something and
you have enough,
they can do it, and you got enough, you can do it. Yeah. It used to be back when I started, which was a long time ago, a million years ago. There was never such a thing as getting married in front of the castle. Like you could not do that. That was like a thing you couldn't do. And then I think what happened, somebody came along one day and said, "How much money y'all got?" And then they figured, hey, we can monetize this space. And of course, you can't do it during the day. You got to do it early in the morning or later at night. But it is possible to get married in front of the castle. And I've even done receptions in front of the Tower of Terror in the courtyard. So that's cool too.
So cool. Yeah.
Parts of the park. Wow.
Well, and I kind of have like a personal question for you, Chuck. And
sure.
And this is just kind of coming from like a hospitality standpoint. I feel like as I've been in the industry, people constantly reference Disney as an example for hospitality and for creating this amazing experience for any guests that step into the park. Do you feel like an immense amount of pressure when someone puts the Disney name on something?
Well, yes, because just like I said earlier, you're always trying to at least over deliver. Exceed guest expectations. When you can exceed guest expectations, you're hitting your mark. One of the things that is kind of great and kind of not great, I'll give you a perfect example of this. When we have an in-park reception at Epcot, there are a couple spaces along the World Show. If you're familiar with World Showcase, there's a private space in Italy right there on the water. There's a private space right there in France along the water, and couples can rent those areas out for receptions. So what will happen is they'll have their ceremony wherever the ceremony is, and then they'll come about 8:30 or so, 9 o'clock to that private area. And the very first thing they get to do is have a private viewing of the fireworks.
Oh,
so that's super cool. So they watch the fireworks, and then dinner is served. They got tables set up. I mean, they've got the whole setup outside, and I'm out there and set up already. And then once the fireworks are done, the park is closing, and then the park will, the guests will leave. But I can't play any amplified music until park clear, which means until the very last guest is out of the park, because they don't want to hear, Low by Little John in World Showcase. So that's how seriously they take it. Even if there's just a few guests wandering back there in World Showcase, they're making sure that all those guests are clear of that area before we play any non-branded Disney music at the reception. So yeah, the pressure's on. The pressure's definitely on.
Wow. So does that mean like you're playing there's like a cocktail type thing and you're playing Disney music, and then once you get that all clear, you can
not even that, because they have their background, they have their BGM going throughout the park. So basically the guests are eating dinner to that, which is the World Showcase. Now if I'm inside, we also do receptions inside the American Adventure. If you're familiar with that attraction, you go in, the Voices of Liberty typically perform right there. That's the rotunda. So that's where we have our reception. And in there's a little bit different because you're closed off. You can start the music earlier and that type of thing. But again, you don't never expect to walk into that attraction and hear Lady Gaga or Justin Timberlake. But it happens. It happens.
or hot to go. That's the
hot to go, right?
Yeah, there you go. Logistics. We're getting off topic a little bit, but you have to get there pretty early, I imagine, because they have to help you cart your stuff out. I mean, like I'm just like the logistics in my head. I'm like, wow, to make the magic happen is not easy.
I bring all my own stuff in and I have it down to a science where it's one trip. So I can unload the car and bring it in one trip. And if we are outside in a guest area, say in Italy or France, I got to be there pretty much before the wedding guests arrive. That's why I'm usually there between 7 and 8 before the wedding guests come. So you guys know this. You don't want wedding guests coming in and you're still in your t-shirt setting up your stuff.
Yeah.
But then I'm basically on hold for maybe 2 or 3 hours while the fireworks and the dinner and all that kind of stuff is going on. So that's one thing. But if I'm in the American Adventure where I'm inside, that's a little bit easier. They give me park access that day, so I go in through the backstage area and get cleared and come in. I can pull up right behind the building there and just load in from the back, and that's actually pretty easy. It's not terrible.
I would say that sounds pretty simple, but the being out with the guests and manipulate that seems pretty crazy. So just knowing how my kids are older now, but just pushing a stroller through the park is it can be an adventure in itself, let alone pushing a hand truck full of all speakers and everything. So that's amazing.
Yes.
All right. So, with this, having a Disney wedding, what do you think some mistakes couple makes? In doing like where do they miss the mark, you think?
Or even mistakes you might see with Disney weddings that you still think might happen with non-Disney weddings too.
Well, I think you can apply this to all weddings is when, and look, I'm not here to crap on any wedding planner. I work with a ton of great wedding planners, but when a couple might hire that wedding planner and she's a wedding planner because she had a wedding once and they're not very experienced, they might get some ideas. Again, there's great wedding planners. I don't mean to sound like that.
No. You're
But-
preach, please.
Everyone knows what you're talking about. It's okay.
But I'll give you a perfect example of you're spending not as much money as you can, but a lot of money on entertainment and a DJ. And you should trust what that DJ is telling you as far as how the entertainment logistics and itinerary is going to flow. And if they give you a timeline for the reception, try to stick to that timeline. Use the timeline from the wedding planner for the ceremony. But when someone who is not thinking about entertainment at the forefront of their mind, they may put together a timeline that is as ridiculous as at 7:28 we're going to do a toast, and at 7:43 we're going to do the father-daughter, and it's so that specific that we all know that doesn't work that way. And then number two, I'll get a couple or a wedding planner every not all the time, but every once in a while they'll say, "Hey Chuck, you know the anniversary dance?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know the anniversary dance." And if anybody's listening that doesn't know what the anniversary dance is that's one of those things where we get all the married couples on the dance floor, and it's a celebration of people who have been married. And then we slowly eliminate them one by one. If you've been married less than 24 hours, please step off to the side. So the couple steps off and everybody laughs. And then we get to somebody that's married for 53 years, and it's a huge moment, and it's great, and it's wonderful. And I'll get sometimes a couple that wants to start off their dance floor that way, not realizing that 90% of your guests who you're trying to celebrate that are married are out here on the dance floor, and we're opening the dance floor by emptying it.
Yep.
And that's not a good, and luckily, and I've been very lucky, you sit down and you explain to the couples why that's not maybe the best thing to do. And then the light bulb goes off and they get it. But they've got this thing in their mind. And sometimes people have this thing in their mind of how they wanted their wedding to be for many, many, many years. And you're saying, that's great. I see what you're trying to do. And you've had this in your mind for a long, long time. But I've done like 1,500 weddings, and I can promise you that it'll work better if we do it this way. And again, I'm lucky. Probably 90% of the couples that I work with will be like, "Oh, Chuck, I never even thought about that." So that's cool. And so listen to the pro. The wedding planner is going to plan your wedding and do that. Your DJ, your entertainer is going to be in charge of your entertainment. So put that trust in your DJ or whoever is doing your entertainment for that night to run the logistics, I guess, for flow, because we all love a good flow, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I like that you explain the why behind it, right? Because I think a lot of people, like you said, they go into their weddings with this certain, vision in mind, but I think the why is really important. But I was also curious because I used to be a planner, and we had that same explanation for the anniversary dance, but a lot of times we would suggest the reverse anniversary dance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So a great way to start it off, but you still have basically everyone out on the dance floor too.
Absolutely. And when there are alternatives, and then they realize, "Oh, I didn't know you could do it that way." Well, yeah, we can do it any way you want. It's your day. We'll make it work your way. Yeah.
And I always think doing the anniversary dance going into the cake is always a good thing. So you've cleared your dance floor, and now you've got everybody's attention right to do the cake, right? Exactly. That's a good time to do it. So, all right. So Chuck, let's talk we're talking a lot about the entertainment at a wedding. How should a couple structure the entertainment, you think, for the wedding?
Well, I think if you've hired a good DJ, they're going to have a good planning form for you, and probably 9 times out of 10, it's laid out the way that DJ has found a good reception will go. So you can follow that pretty much right to the T, from your introduction to the first dance, a toast, all that kind of stuff, all the way down to the farewell dance. Or if there's something special like an anniversary dance or something non-conventional, which I always suggest, if a couple comes to me and says, "Hey, there's something not on your form that we want to do," I'm like, "Tell me more," because I want to know.
Let me learn why. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I want to know why you're doing this and why it's special to you, because then we can really make something special that's not typical, that all your guests have already seen before at some other wedding reception, and they're judging you silently in your head and all that. So when the couple has an idea, and maybe they're not quite sure of how to, how the execution is going to go or anything like that, we kind of have a little powwow about that and say, well, that would work perfectly right in here, and we can slot that in and do that. So always think about I would say always think about the flow, because that as entertainers, that's so important to us, because we want things to flow really, really nicely, one into the other, and then build upon the night and build and build and build until we have that last dance and it's just one of those things where it's already over. Yeah, time flies, but you don't want to end on a down note, right? So I always encourage couples to kind of think in that kind of a realm of what are we going to do to make this special to you, but also keep it flowing in that where your guests are going to feel engaged and, into your party.
That's awesome. Real quick, I was curious too, like when it comes to Disney, is there things that you have to do differently when it comes to Disney as far as like the entertainment, or is it pretty much like a traditional wedding and you're just at the park and you have Mickey and Minnie,
Right. It is, other than kind of the specialized entertainment sometimes, it is a lot like structured like other wedding receptions. There's something that we do, and I do this in, outside weddings too, not just at Disney, but there's something called virtual fireworks that I do, and it's it's animated fireworks inside the ballroom. And the reason that started was back in COVID times, right? Remember those times when Disney was being really restrictive on big gatherings, and they canceled the fireworks for a long time. And everybody loved this show called Happily Ever After, the fireworks show. And people were really missing that, and they couldn't go out and see this fireworks show. So I kind of brainstormed and put together a 5-minute animated fireworks show that you can project inside the ballroom, and sold that as kind of like an alternative. Well, that just kind of took off on a life on its own. So that's something special that you can do. But as far as just fitting something into Disney, the only restrictions I really have at Disney, there's a couple of artists that I am not allowed to play at Disney, no matter if it's a private event or not. And I can tell you, those artists are R. Kelly and Michael Jackson. Yeah. R. Kelly and Michael Jackson.
Okay.
R. Kelly and
sense.
Michael Jackson, I am not allowed to play. And then any song that I play, no matter where it is the edited radio friendly version of that.
Yeah.
They don't want any F-bombs on Disney property. Then there's only really one other, and if we're in a ballroom, if we're in a private room, then that's it. That's the only restrictions I have to go by. But now if I am out in a different area, like for example, there's an outside reception area at the Grand Floridian Resort called Summer House, which is right next to the pool. And they do that during the cooler months. I just did a wedding there a couple of weeks ago. Now there are other guests walking around that resort property, right? So I am probably not going to be able to play certain songs. Cardi B, maybe I'm not allowed to play, because they don't want their regular day guests hearing something that isn't consistent with the Disney brand. That isn't. So if there's questionable lyrics in a public area, I'm kind of restricted on that. But inside the ballroom, as long as it's edited, then pretty much anything goes. So,
well, there's so
Do
much to
couples
think
ever
about.
get kind of like upset about that?
Well, they ask why, why can't we have Thriller at our Halloween wedding? And I just say, guys, I wish I could help you. It's their house. It's their rules.
Yeah.
And I want to continue to work there. So I do my best to accommodate them. And interestingly enough, I can play Jackson 5, no problem. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Jackson
I would
5
think
is not an issue. Yeah.
Oh,
A little bit more wholesome, I guess.
Yeah. I think, a lot of what it comes down to is just what a lawyer says somewhere in a Burbank, headquarter, and they've just made their mark. And then everybody at the parks and the operations end of it just have to follow those rules. It's not trying to be malicious to anybody or hurt anybody's, party or anything like that. It's just one of the rules you got to stay in the lane with. So,
yeah, no, makes sense. Totally does.
Yeah.
All right. How about a memorable moment from a Disney wedding?
Let's see, a memorable moment from
and
a
I'm
Disney
sure you have
wedding.
a lot.
Well, there's good ones and bad ones, right? And but by bad ones, I mean entertaining ones, but I don't know that I should tell them.
Well, no, and you already said earlier, like, people ask you about the bad before the good. We want to hear the good things.
Yeah. So one of my very, very favorite memories was there is a venue at Epcot called the Living Seas Lounge. And if you've been to the restaurant there, it's on the second floor. It's above the restaurant. It's a private lounge, but you're still underwater, if that makes sense. You still have the windows you can look out. And there was a wedding there, and somebody was getting married to Bruce Hall. And if you know who Bruce Hall is the bassist of REO Speedwagon. And I think a lot of the members of REO Speedwagon live in Orlando. And so it was super cool because when I got up there, and this will tell you how old this is, it's probably about 15 years ago. When I got up there, I had already talked to Bruce beforehand, and he had given me a track to play for their first dance, a song that he wrote for his wife that had not been released yet in their library. So I got to play a REO Speedwagon song before it was actually released, and that was pretty.
That's pretty cool. That is actually really cool. Yeah, we went on a Disney cruise, and one of the members of REO Speedwagon was on the cruise. So I don't remember. So I don't remember which one, but that makes sense now that they're all from Orlando area.
Yeah, and they do. When the Epcot festivals come up, it's almost. You can almost guarantee REO Speedwagon will be playing a couple of those dates because they're there and ready to go.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you remember Bruce's partner's reaction to the song when they heard it for the first time?
Yeah, she was it was touching for her. She was very surprised, and she heard it, and it was good. It was neat. It was just a different kind of experience. I wasn't expecting it. So, but that was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. All right. So now some of the weddings, from what I understand, at Disney can get a little smaller. Like, so how is it? How do you have to do anything different to entertain a smaller group compared to a larger group? Or
yeah, man, I did. They have one time slot that is it's an 11 to 3 time slot. So 11 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. That's usually a brunch wedding. I've done weddings for as few as 12 people. You got the couple. Yeah. And that's including the couple. So you've got 10 guests and the couple. And, it's not Saturday night at the club. We understand that. And I think a lot of them understand that too. But I think a lot of them want that DJ option because they don't want to have to deal with, they still want to do a first dance. They still want an MC to help coordinate things. And, a lot of times it is a more subdued event, and that's cool. But sometimes, I'll look at a group come in, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be a long one. It's not going to be very, fun in my eyes. And then they'll surprise me and they'll dance for, 2 hours straight, just like 10 people. And so that's always like, that's the gift to me, because you know what it's like. You would rather work 3 hours, a great party, than 1 hour looking at an empty dance floor.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Every time. So when I get that surprise, that's great. But even when it's not, and they're just chatting and I'll go up at the end, I'll say, hey, I just like I said, I realized this wasn't a night at the club or anything like that. And they're like, oh my God, we had the best time. It was awesome. It was just what we wanted. And so we're thinking in our minds a lot of times what the guests want, and a lot of times what the guests want aren't what we're thinking they want.
And it's amazing because sometimes that's just like, I feel so bad, or for the couple, and they'll come up to you, this was the most amazing thing ever, like you said, but in my mind I remember the craziness. So
yes,
anyway.
I got one of the biggest tips I ever got on a wedding like that, and I was shocked. And then, you'll go on a Saturday night and do a 150 person wedding, and you're rocking the whole time. And then it's like, thanks very much. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Nothing. Yeah. No.
Which is fine. That's totally fine. But
it totally is.
Yeah.
I know you're saying, because it just one of the easiest weddings I had in a long time. And the couple was easy. Everyone, it just flowed. The dance floor was packed all night. It wasn't like one of those ones where you really had to work really hard at.
Right.
And I got the biggest tip I've ever received. And then the next night I worked so hard for the couple, and it was just like, and I'm like, well, maybe this balances itself out because the couple last night tipped me for tonight because
Right.
and I got nothing from the couple I worked so hard for, so it just, it is what it is. I'm always great.
Good. It's good. Yeah.
And that's my Disney money when I get tips. So that's the money.
There you go. Come to Orlando and spend your money. We love it when you come to Orlando and spend your money. Yes.
Yeah. You got to do that more often. So anyway, are there any trends you're seeing in the weddings that you're doing, like with Disney and non-Disney?
Yeah. All over. Just let's just call it right now and just get rid of the bouquet and garter toss forever.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know the last time I did a garter toss. That's I hardly ever do. I mean, I do, but not very often.
Those don't show up anymore.
Yeah. And maybe 50% of the time, they'll want to throw a bouquet, but even out of that 50% of the time, the ladies that are coming up, 90% of them don't want to be up there, and they make it very obvious they don't want to be up there. And it's like pulling teeth, and let's let it go. If you got a bouquet and you really want to give it away, give it to your mom, give it to somebody special to you, give it to somebody that made a difference in your life. Don't bring that uncomfortableness to your party.
Well, Kevin, we had a bride who did that recently.
Mm-hmm.
Who made this really beautiful bouquet. I think she recreated her mom's bouquet from her wedding day.
Perfect.
And then gave it away to her mom. And it was like such a sweet, special moment. And her mom just looked so grateful. It was just way better than any bouquet toss could be.
And that's one of those personalized and customized moments that I would just be like all over, because you can incorporate that. And it's so much more entertaining. And you remembered that from somebody you don't even know. Mm-hmm. So the guests are going to remember that forever. And you didn't have to do the cheesy toss.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's funny. I feel like weddings are becoming very non-traditional right now. Outside of, I still see introductions. I still see a first dance, and I still see speeches of some kind. After that, it's a mixed bag of tricks, that you're going to get. We went through a whole phase here in California where no one was cutting the cake, or they were doing silent cake cuttings where they would go over and just cut the cake on their own. And now all of a sudden for 2025, couples weren't even having cakes here, so I felt sorry for our baker friends. And then all of a sudden next year, it's people want these big elaborate cakes. So it's just, it's like a roller coaster sometimes for, you just got to ride the wave.
People put a lot of what's the word? Trust into those trends too. Like my sister's getting married right now, and she was asking me the other day, what trends you're seeing. And she asked about cake specifically. And I said, you know what? People aren't really cutting anymore. And if they do, it's a really small cake, or they'll do mini desserts. And she's like, okay, we're not going to do that. We're just going to do mini desserts. And I'm like, whoa, you don't have to take my word for it. Do what you want, do what makes you happy. But I think people put a lot of value into the trends that are happening too.
Yeah. And think about this, Kevin, also from our point of view, it also makes it better for us, because do you remember back in the day, you're probably old enough to remember that back in the day, the thought was, well, whenever you cut the cake, that's when the guests leave. Right? I mean, you would hear that. And so now, if we're not doing a bouquet and garter, which I'm happy not to do, and the only other really thing is maybe parent dances and a cake, I always encourage couples. I say, look, when the dinner is wrapping up, let's cut the cake right then when the dinner's wrapping up, because you're doing a couple things. You're cutting it early, so your catering staff can cut it up and get it out and serve. Number two, you're cutting it so early that the guests aren't going to be like, oh, well, you're cutting it, I'm leaving right now because we just finished dinner. So they're not going to do that. And then the other thing is that makes it so there's no interruption for the rest of the night. Man, it's just you hit the dance floor and then you go until the farewell dance. You're not stopping an hour into the dancing. Say, all right, everybody, let's sit down and let's watch them cut the cake over there. I've seen that trend as well, having the cake cut right at the end of dinner and getting that out of the way.
Yeah. And it's just, there's no start, stop stuff going on. And and people just want to have a party now, you know,
Yes.
and they want to celebrate with their guests. And I think that's the bigger trend. And I think that's the reason behind a lot of that. So like, I like your idea too, of cutting, if you are going to do a cake, do it early. So your, you know, guests get, you know, and you're throwing the guests for a curveball, you know, cause like they do.
Right.
But you know, you think about it, 15 plus years ago at a wedding, it's like the older guests would get their coffee, get their cake, they had it, and they're gone.
They're out.
I mean, they were gone. So that's not the case anymore. All right. So curious, you know, how often do you go to the parks, Chuck?
I don't go to the parks a lot because, you know, I was up until about 10 years ago, I was a cast member as well. So I worked, I worked a lot in the parks in the entertainment field as well. But the thing is, I look at it as kind of like having a pool. You know, you want a friend that has a pool, because then you can go and enjoy the pool and then come home. So if there's a new, like Guardians of the Galaxy and Tron, were two of the new roller coasters that just opened, and I'm a roller coaster nut. So I'm lucky enough to have a couple friends that still work and say, "Hey, Chuck, you want to come ride Tron?" So we'll go, you know, we'll ride Tron. And then after about an hour, I'm like, okay, see you later. We're done. So it doesn't mean I don't love Disney. I do. In fact, I'm trying to get to Disneyland in Paris very soon. And I feel like that'll be a whole new experience for me because I've never worked there. I've never seen the backstage areas, right? I've never seen the break rooms that the guests don't see. So, you know.
Well, it's so cool. You get access to all of that too. Like, that's amazing. I did go to Disneyland Paris about 2 years ago, and it was really cool, like, to see a different park. But I mean, I'm sure an even cooler experience for you getting to go behind the scenes. Yeah.
It's, you know, people, if you live in Florida and you say, you know, I work at Disney, or I because right now I'm not a cast member. I'm a contractor through Disney. But if you have any type of connection to Disney and you're in Florida, they're like, okay, yeah. So is everybody on my street work for Disney. But people that are out of state, like my relatives who live in Pennsylvania or somewhere else, it's like, oh, you work for Disney. Can you get me in free to Disney? I'm like, no, I can't. Sorry, I can't. But it carries a little more weight when you're not around it all the time, I guess you should say. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I get it. And then let's just be real. There's nothing. The word Disney and free don't go together in any aspect of it all.
Yes. Having said that, if you are visiting, especially around the holidays, there is a free thing you can do, and I've been telling everybody about this. You go to the Disney Springs area. It used to be called Downtown Disney, and they have a Christmas tree walk. They had decorate all these Christmas trees to these different themes. 100% free. You can go and walk around and do all of that. You could spend the entire evening there doing that. So do that while it's still free.
That's funny. Yeah, exactly. Because it probably won't be free much longer.
Right.
It's. I was your Disney's. I was at the conference that I met you at the Central Florida Wedding one, and I went over my last night there. I just went down to Disney Springs and putzed around and bought the kids some Halloween stuff, and because we don't. But you're that whole Disney Springs is like a theme park in itself. It's so big compared to our little downtown Disney. Our little area is so small, compared to Disney Springs. It's absolutely amazing. So, you mentioned Tron and Guardians of the Galaxy. Which was your favorite? Just out of curiosity.
Guardians.
Is hands down the best Disney roller coaster I've ever been on. My experience, that thing is absolutely amazing. So
Tron. I was just going to say I enjoyed Tron, but it's a little too short for me.
That's what I was going to say. So it's too short. Tron's great, but it's short. Like I expected it to be longer. Like we got done and the ride was over, and I was like, "That was it." Like it was cool, but that was it. So but Guardians was. I would have rode that thing a couple more times. It's so amazing. So anyway.
Sorry, August, you were saying something.
I was going to say, don't they have that same roller coaster in Paris too? Or something similar?
No,
I think it's the only one.
Yeah, Guardians is the only one. Oh, Tron is what we're talking about. That's in Shanghai Disneyland. Yes.
Okay.
So that's.
Oh, I'm thinking of the Avengers
China.
coaster.
Yeah, the Avengers coaster is only at Epcot. totally at Epcot. But yeah, Tron was brought over from China, but we can probably safely say that 98% of Americans will probably never get to Shanghai, China to ride the Tron roller coaster there. So yeah, that's what I'm sure that's what
they're talking about doing the Tron at they're talking about where they can put Tron at Disneyland
in California. Yeah.
Because it's going to be the next great thing. All right.
Yeah.
So we always like to end with some tips, Chuck. What when it comes to entertainment, Disney or non-Disney, what are some tips that you think our couples need to remember when they're planning their entertainment?
Man, I've said it before, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but telling your story, customizing, personalizing. If you can if you can figure out a way to tell your story through your day, you are going to hit a home run. Your guests are going to be saying it's the best wedding I've ever been to. And as terrible as for me to say this, it's not about how many people dance. It's not about the sing-along songs, which they're all great. And I love it if you do that. But it's really about those memorable moments that you create. And I always tell couples, when you're spending money, when you're planning your wedding and you're actually putting money down to buy something, you need to ask yourself this question. You're going to say to yourself, okay, is this personalizing my day? Is it customized? Is it telling my story? And if it is, great, spend the money on that. But if you're buying something for your wedding and it's not doing that, you need to ask yourself, why are we doing this? Because just like you said, Kevin, weddings are way different than even 10 years ago. Nothing is written in stone anymore. And there's nobody that has to tell you that you have to buy personalized napkins for your bar, because they're all going to go in the garbage. Nobody's going to remember that. So always think about what you're spending money on and is it accomplishing a goal for that night for you? Because if it's not, seriously considering cut it. It doesn't make a difference. So,
yeah, and you don't always have to listen to your mom and dad.
That's right. That's right. If they're paying, give them one thing, right? Give them one thing and say, Mom, Dad, we're going to do this, but then I'm going to do this and this and this over here, and usually that works out pretty good. So,
yeah, I always say you got to give them a win. So,
right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
All right, that's a great tip. August, you got any tips?
I think what I took away from this too is, of course, structuring the event around the flow. And I think that's something, when I used to plan that, a lot of couples didn't take into consideration. I know we referenced like the stop, go. I would always say, let's get all the formalities out of the way, just so that way your guests can dance. Because, of course, they're there for you, but they really just want to get out on the dance floor too. So, picking the formalities that are important to you and not feeling like you have to do all of them. Like, if the bouquet toss is going to make you uncomfortable, you don't have to do it. It's okay. These days, it's all about doing what you want. It's your day. You're putting a lot of time, effort, money into this. Do what's best for you and create a great flow for your guests.
And it's funny you say that too, because I've been doing something lately that has really been working out really, really well. And it's all because the cake is now, almost all the weddings I do, we're cutting the cake right there at the end of dinner. And you know what it's like when people are kind of finishing up the meal. Some people aren't done yet. Some people are. Some people are looking around like, what's going on? And when you're a guest sitting at that table and you don't know what's happening, what's going on, that's really frustrating. So I've been taking it upon myself, and I feel like this really works out well. About 10 minutes before we cut the cake, I'll get on the mic and I'll say, hey guys, I know everybody wants to know what's going on. You see that beautiful cake over there? We're going to cut that up in a few minutes. So if you haven't gotten a picture of it, you want to do that now. And then people are like, oh yeah, okay. So it's just people. I don't want to say people want to be told what to do, but they want to know what's going on. You've been to a guest wedding where you're sitting around and it's like nothing's happening. You're like, what is it? Things are happening. We promise you. Just nobody's telling you. That's all.
Yeah, people like to be directed. They really do. Yeah. People like to be told what to do, whether they want to or not. But people feel more comfortable when they know what's going on and what
right.
What are the rules and all that stuff. So
we're simple creatures.
Right.
We really are. So, and sometimes we make it a little too difficult. All right. Right. So Chuck, how can people get in contact with you?
Go to my website. It's classicdj.com. Very easy, classicdj.com. And if you're looking for me on the socials, it's another easy one, Orlando Wedding DJ. All one word. Yeah, so perfect. Instagram or TikTok, Orlando Wedding DJ. That's me. Yeah,
Perfect.
come see me there. Yeah.
That sounds
and
amazing.
Chuck, I have one more question for you before we hop off. I was kind of wondering what your favorite Disney character is.
Oh,
My favorite Disney character. It's probably Goofy. And
Mm.
we'll see if you can maybe guess why Goofy is my favorite character, because, I used to work in entertainment back in the day. So you can draw your own conclusions from that.
You were Goofy.
I'm not saying anything. I like Goofy a
Unapologetic.
That's hilarious. What's your favorite character, August?
I'm gonna go with Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, I
There you
like
go.
when I was a kid, Winnie the Pooh was mine, but I'm a Stitch guy right now. I love
Yeah.
give me some Stitch. So
Yeah,
anyway.
real funny, and you don't have to use this, but when my kids were little, when that movie came out, Stitch, you know how they did the campaign for that where Stitch was interrupting other Disney movies? And
Yes.
he was
Right.
kind of like a vandal. So
Yeah.
when they premiered that ride at the Magic Kingdom, my kids were at a school where they were invited to go, and they all wore little Stitch hats. And that was the day they TP'd the castle. And
Oh,
the castle was full of, and all the guests that they complained because they're trying to take a picture of Cinderella's castle and it's got graffiti on it and toilet paper hanging from it because Stitch was there, right?
yes.
Who would be complaining? That's like a once in a
I know.
lifetime thing. Like
Once
that's
in a
so
lifetime.
fun.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that was a pretty
Well,
cool memory.
Well, that ride was horrible. That was yes, that was
Right.
it was not
Very
a ride.
bizarre.
Yeah, it was
Right.
very bizarre. Yeah, I was like, this is the silliest thing ever. Because we got to do it. We were in there for one of the conferences, I forget, and we snuck down to Disney for a little bit, and we rode the ride because it didn't have a long line, and I was like, what is this? And yes.
And it didn't last very long.
No,
So, yeah.
obviously for that reason. So anyway, all right. Well, Chuck, thank you so much. We can't thank you enough for being here. We'll have
Guys,
all of
thank
Chuck,
you.
of course, and we'll have all of Chuck's information in the show notes, and we'll see you next time. Happy holidays, everyone.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Sound Event Services. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode. Please get in touch with me if you have a topic you would like us to cover, or if you are struggling with your wedding planning. Please be sure to submit a question at podcast@fantasysound.com. I encourage you to check out our other episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're a fan, we'd love if you would subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It helps others find our podcast so they can learn from our guests too. And to everyone listening, happy wedding planning.